There we go. Now it's on.
I already have a question. Awesome. Are we live?
You're live.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. From wherever you are in the world, I'm currently in Korea, and I'm freshly disembarked from Queen Elizabeth. We spent 19 nights aboard her, floating around Japan, Taiwan, and a little brief encounter with Korea. So I'm here to answer any questions you have. Pop them in the chat as you have them. Otherwise, I do have an itinerary of information to share with you. So I should say that preceding this cruise, which was April, actually, we had not been on Queen Elizabeth for 2 years. So plenty of time to notice differences and changes. We were on Queen Victoria in the autumn of 2022, but that's a different ship. So different facilities, slightly different activities on offer. And of course, much has changed since travel has gotten back in full swing. So we actually already have a question in the chat. First off, good evening, Jeff. Thank you for joining us. The question is, do you think that the drinks package, specifically the alcohol package, wine, beer, etc., is worth it when on Queen Elizabeth? So the drinks package, in my opinion, is absolutely not worth it. Here's why. One, all members of the cabin, all passengers in any given cabin must get the drinks package. So it can't just be, let's say you're cruising with your spouse, you want the drinks package, your spouse does not. Doesn't work that way. You both have to get the drinks package. So if only one of you drinks, that literally doubles the cost of the drinks package for just one of you to indulge freely. But two, the number of drinks you would have to consume in a day to get above the daily drinks package cost, which I think currently is $169 a person. It's somewhere around their US dollars. But it's at least that. That's a lot of drinks. And I'm not certain, I guess it depends on how much you drink. If you are a 10 plus drinks person a day, then maybe it might be worth it, because the nice thing about the drinks package is that gratuities are included, whereas when you order a beverage just standardly a la carte, then a 15% service charge is added on top of that automatically. So yeah, I guess it depends on your drinking habits, but for the average casual, a couple of drinks a day drinker, it's probably not going to be worth it. And it will definitely not be worth it no matter what, if only one of the members of your party traveling in your cabin actually partakes. Yeah. So that's my feeling on the drinks package. They keep playing around with the non-alcoholic drink package. So I think there's a soda package now. Yeah, there's a soft drinks package. And there used to be a premium hot drinks package, but I think they've done away with that. I heard several complaints about that on the last voyage. I myself am a tea drinker, but I did not feel, back when they were offering the hot drinks package, I didn't feel that the upcharge for the premium level tea was really worth the daily amount, because that's the other thing. It's per day for the entire duration of your voyage. So that can add up really quickly. I mean, God, $169 a day per person times 19, that's a lot of extra money.
There's the hot drinks options.
My secretaries brought me the latest and greatest in intelligence on the drinks package. So they actually, interesting. They actually have different prices for different numbers of nights, right? So if you just want the beer, wines, and spirits option, and that is not free access to every single alcoholic beverage spirit, beer, or wine that they have, by the way. That's on a specific limited menu. For less than 5 nights, it's $95. For 5 to 14 nights, it's $72, and this is per night. For 15 nights to 84 nights, it's $75 per night per person in your cabin, right? Okay, so I was doubling that number in my head. I apologize. Then I was thinking about it per cabin, yeah. So premium non-alcoholic options, it's $40 for less than 5 nights, it's $45 across the board. No matter what, it's $45 a night, no matter the length of your voyage. Then the hot drinks option, which I guess they must have brought back, or maybe it just wasn't offering the hot drinks that people wanted, is $17.50 a night, straight across the board. And the soft drinks option is $15 a night, straight across the board. Again, all members of your cabin have to then get the drinks package because, of course, they realized that people were going to game the system and try to share beverages, which is, of course, not legitimate.
You said the alcohol one was 95?
Yeah, so the alcohol one for less than 5, it's funny, the price per day goes down slightly the longer your voyage is. So for alcohol, for beers, wines, and spirits, then that is $95 a night. If it's less than 5 nights, $80 from 5 to 14 nights, and $75
So
from
beer,
yeah.
that's like 11 beers a day.
Right. Okay. Well, so my beloved, who drinks a lot of beer, says that that's like about 11 beers a day. So you would have to drink a lot of beer to make it worth it. So again, it kind of depends on your drinking habits. Yeah. So that's a very good question, actually. Something to add for that, though, you do get a 20% discount. Right. So here's the nitty gritty of the drinks package for those who don't know, the spirit section specifically. That does include liqueurs and cocktails up to $13.50 per serving. It will also get you the premium soft drinks option, and you will get a 20% discount on any beverages retailing above $13.50. That price is pre-gratuity price, by the way. So, yeah. You do have to consider your drinking habits. For someone like me who drinks half a glass of wine a day, maybe, when I'm traveling, it would be a waste of money. So you have the information. You can now make your own choices. Let's see. Apropos of the drinks option, there generally, everyone I talk to who is more of a social drinker than I am and has spent time going out on the town in places like Tokyo and New York City and London, some of the more expensive, fashionable places to go and get your drink on. They did mention that the prices on board are actually comparable to going to, a high-end bar in Manhattan or London. So for those of you who might come from less pricey parts of the world, I know that might seem like a lot, but according to my intelligence, that price is kind of on par with what you'll get out in the real world, so to say. Yeah. Okay, great question, and one that hopefully won't set the internet on fire when this publishes in the comments. Okay, so other questions I have received in advance, and of course, dear viewer, as you are watching along, if you have any questions, even if they're not appropriate to what I'm currently discussing, if you put them in the chat, I promise I will get back to them. If you're watching this as a recording, any questions you have that I don't address in the video, I will absolutely address it if you put the question in the comments below the video. Okay, moving on. Dining options. So the dining has not really changed in the 2 years since we've been on board, except for 2 years ago we were in the Queen's Grill, which maybe no one wants to know.
Did you see that if you book your drinks option beforehand, you get a 10% discount?
Oh, no, I didn't see that. So that's interesting. If you book your drinks back to the drinks package, sorry about this. Yeah, so Jeff, one more bit about the drinks package. If you book in advance, you actually get 10% off the drinks package than if you wait until you book on board. So, you have time, you say, until next year, so you have some time to cogitate and decide whether it's the right choice for you, but you would get a 10% discount on that. So, yeah. You're very welcome. Thanks for the great question. I will say that the premium teas looked pretty decent. They were in pyramid bags and they were sort of the whole leaf kind of tea. I did spot them. The premium hot beverages are served, they're prepared in the Corinthia Lounge. You can order them from basically anywhere on the ship and they will be brought to you. And I did see some people taking, tea with a very nice little pot and a very nice little cup in various corners of the ship. So, yeah. Just because they're served in the Corinthia doesn't mean you have to take them there. Now, that allows me to segue into the dining options. So, of course, there are the usual standard classic cruise dining options. There's the main dining room, which is basically for passengers in Britannia balcony. and below, so Britannia balcony, outside and inside cabins, including inside deluxe cabins. And then you have one step above that, you have the club, the Britannia Club restaurant, which is specifically at passengers in Britannia Club balconies. Britannia Club balconies are basically the same in terms of size and shape and layout and amenities and facilities as regular Britannia balcony cabins. The only difference is you get access to the Britannia Club, which is an a la carte, no fixed time, freedom dining situation where you do get your own table for the entire time. It's your table. You can show up anytime between the dining hours, which may vary depending on your voyage. Standardly, it used to be anytime between 6 and 9, but on our voyage, everything was actually earlier, a half hour to an hour, depending on the meal time in question. So just check your daily program when you get on board. The point is, if you're in the club, you order from, you do have the same menu options. You do have the same menu options. Apologize for that noise. That was my assistant getting his butt fired. If anyone heard that. Anyway, the Britannia Club has access to the same menu as in the main dining room, which is called the Britannia Restaurant, by the by. But there's also an a la carte menu that is slightly elevated, slightly higher caliber than you would have in the a la carte menu that's in the main dining room. And for those who didn't know, there is an a la carte menu for the main dining room as well. It is unpublished, but if you ask for it, they will show you. There's generally salmon on that menu every night. There's generally chicken breast on that menu every night. And there's generally a steak on that menu every night. So you just have to ask for the a la carte options. They are the standards that are available every night, even in the main dining room. In the Britannia Club, the a la carte menu has more elevated options. And then from the Britannia Club, which I've heard many people say was decent, whether or not it's worth the upcharge, because the upcharge can be rather steep between a Britannia balcony and Britannia Club balcony. So sometimes twice as much, depending on what kind of deal you might be getting on either of those two cabins. So is it worth twice the amount? I don't think so. It wouldn't be worth it to me. And especially now that they have freedom dining in the main dining room, which for many people was the draw of Britannia Club, that they could go and dine anytime. But now in the main dining room, the deck 2 is devoted to freedom dining. So again, there's fewer and fewer differences between the Britannia and the Britannia Club. Britannia Club, you still do get your own table, and it's yours for the duration of the voyage, which also means you're less likely to be sat with new companions, with people you don't know, so you can meet new people. So from the Britannia Club, which, by the way, it's a really elegant space. The Britannia Club restaurants on all three of the Queens, I have to say I prefer the Britannia Club on Elizabeth and Victoria in terms of their elegance. They are Art Deco, just masterpieces. They are gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous spaces. So yeah, I mean, yes, the Britannia restaurant is a beautiful space, but the Britannia Club is definitely one step up in terms of interior decor and elegance, and also slightly finer china, slightly finer table settings, all that sort of stuff. So you are getting a slightly elevated experience in the Britannia Club. Whether it's worth it is a question for you. Personally, I wouldn't pay for it myself, but I would be happy for a free upgrade, which are no longer probably going to be a thing, and I'll get to that in a moment when we get to the cabins. So dining, you also have the Princess Grill. The grills harken back to an older time in Cunard's history, almost 100 years ago, back when there was literally a grill built on the ship as a separate part of the galley, where they grilled, the highest quality steaks, the finest cuts of meat. And of course, that was only open to the first class passengers. And so the grills, the Queen's Grill and the Princess Grill, have kind of taken on that first and second class dining experience, I guess, and created a separate space. So if you are in a Princess Grill cabin, a Princess Suite, as they are called, although suite is a pretty strong word in my opinion, but if you are in a Princess Suite, then you have access to the Princess Grill restaurant for breakfast, lunch, tea, and afternoon tea and dinner. And again, The food is slightly elevated. The daily rotating menus are slightly elevated relative to the other two venues below it. They also have an a la carte menu that is, again, slightly elevated above the two venues that are below it. The price difference, interestingly, between a balcony club and a Princess Grill is sometimes not very much. And if you're booking at the right time, oddly, you can sometimes get a Princess Grill for less than the balcony club. Yeah, the vicissitudes of fares. So from the Princess Grill, you have the Queen's Grill. And I have personally dined in the Queen's Grill. We spent 2 weeks in the Queen's Grill, and it is absolutely an amazing experience because the Queen's Grill has its own rotating menu of daily specials that are astounding. Then it also has an a la carte menu that is the same every day and has some really amazing cuts of meat, like Wagyu beef, like lamb chops, like fresh wild salmon instead of farm salmon, really elevated options. But the best thing about the grills, the best thing about the Queen's Grill, can I see your shoes? I'm wearing slippers, so I don't think you would be very excited by my shoes. I'm at home, we run a shoe-free operation. Anyway, the Queen's Grill is were you hoping to see my boots? The boots I wear in a lot of my videos? I'm sorry, they're on the shoe rack out in the foyer. The Queen's Grill, you can actually order anything you want, anything your heart desires, not on any menu. And if they have the ingredients somewhere on the ship, or if they can procure the ingredients in the next port, they will make it for you. Anything. We threw all sorts. My table was throwing crazy things at our chef all the time. Some of you heard the story of the bloomin' onion. I requested gluten-free paleo buckwheat pancakes, wrote up the recipe by hand and gave it to the kitchen, and they prepared it for me every morning. So yeah, if they can find a recipe for it and the ingredients, to the point of literally sending someone off the ship in the next port and buying them from a local store, they will do that. So in Queen's Grill, you really are getting the next level experience in the dining room.
And you delivered ingredients once.
Yeah, well, I also went and bought some myself once because they weren't certain they would know where to get them. And I speak Spanish, so I knew exactly where to go get them when we were in Spain. Anyway, for Queen's Grill and Princess Grill, you also get afternoon tea in the Princess Grill restaurant. There used to be, in the midst of time, a difference between the Queen's Grill tea and the Princess Grill tea, but presumably there weren't enough people in either venue taking part of that, so they just combined them into one afternoon tea. I have a video on that if you want to check it out. It's also one of my most controversial videos that gets a lot of hate. I would say that it was a little disappointing. For the amount that we had paid for the Queen's Grill, the afternoon tea was not that much more elevated, really, than the options down in the Queen's Room that are available for everyone on the ship. Yeah.
And the Queen's Room has playing occasionally.
And the Queen's Room actually has live music every single afternoon tea and sometimes tea dances, whereas up in the grills, there was no live music during tea. So
if you want a very private
yeah.
tea.
So if you want a private, very quiet tea and hardly anyone there, and you are in the grills, then absolutely the grills tea is the one for you. You're up on deck 12 is where the grills are on Queen Elizabeth. And so you have a pretty spectacular view out over the ocean, but that also means if there is any motion on the ship, then you will feel it extra specially up there because of, the way that works. The higher you go up, the more range of motion that arc gets. So if you are prone to seasickness, the grills might not be a good option for you. On Queen Mary, the grills are on deck 7, I think. So lower, actually, deck 6 or 7. They're not high up though. So yeah, if I could suggest any one thing for future ship design, it would be to stop putting the grills at the top of the ship for those of us who are susceptible to the motion of the ship. So those are the dining options that are some of the main dining rooms, shall we say, the central key dining rooms that are associated with each cabin type. From there are many other dining options that are still included in the cost of your fare. So still to this day in the Corinthia Lounge, you can get light bites for breakfast and pastries up until 11 a.m., I think. And then from lunch, they have sandwiches, special sandwiches that change every day and totally free of charge. They have an afternoon snack in the Corinthia Lounge, again, free of charge. They're kind of hoping, and maybe correctly so, that if you sit there and eat, you will order some of the premium hot beverages that they have on offer in the Corinthia Lounge. And the Corinthia Lounge is in the center of the ship, right next to the main atrium. So it's on deck 2. So you can go and enjoy it without having to go very far. And also that means it'll be one of the places where the least motion is felt on the ship. So if you are susceptible to seasickness, then the Corinthia Lounge on Queen Elizabeth might be a good option for you to just sort of sit and nest there. Okay, so in addition to the Corinthia Lounge, there is also the Golden Lion Pub. And the Golden Lion Pub is, you walk in there and minus the stench of ancient cigarette smoke, it feels just like an English pub. Any pub I've been in London, in Sussex, in Essex. It's got a really nice vibe and it's very comfortable. There's all kinds of seating and they have a menu for lunch and dinner. I don't think they have a breakfast menu. No, they're not even open for breakfast. But they actually they added something new to the menu this time. They added lamb curry. So you can now get chicken tikka masala and lamb curry, both for lunch and dinner in the Golden Lion Pub. The fish and chips, I've been reliably informed by people who care, is excellent. Yeah, it's actually very good food. It's included in the cost of your fare. But if it's a sea day and you would like to eat lunch there, I really recommend getting there the second they open because it fills up and people just roost there. They nest there for the day until it's time to go and change for dinner. So don't count on tables being turned during the lunch hour. If you want to eat lunch there on a sea day, go the second they open. On a port day, it's no problem to go and eat lunch at the Golden Lion Pub. Everyone's gone. You basically have the ship to yourself. Okay, those are the restaurant options. Now, by which I mean where you sit down and someone serves you food. Then, of course, there is the buffet. For those of you who've been on other cruise ships, you know they all have buffets of some kind. And of course, Cunard is no exception. I would say that their buffet, though, is of a pretty high caliber compared to some of the other ships on which I've cruised. And in fact, we took dinner in the buffet many nights because the menu was actually more interesting to us than it was in the main dining room. But that's a personal taste thing. My father-in-law, on the other hand, delighted in being pampered and made sure to dine every single night in the main dining room because he enjoyed the kind of food they were serving on the menu. Whereas my beloved and I, we like more international fare. They have themes, you see, in the buffet, in the Lido deck buffet. Dinner themes rotated between Spanish and British and American. We avoided it on the American nights because that just sounded scary. Japanese, Malaysian, Indian, and then there was an Oriental buffet night, which was kind of a little bit of everywhere in Asia, a couple dishes from different parts of Asia. And because the kitchen staff on Queen Elizabeth, many of them are from these various places, they actually contributed their family recipes to go on the buffet. So we were able to taste dishes we wouldn't have seen in your standard curry restaurant or your standard Malaysian restaurant or your standard Indonesian restaurant. So, there was very, very good food to be had at dinner time. The lunch buffet also varied from day to day, although there wasn't a theme for that. But being on board 19 days, we could definitely see how the dishes and the themes rotated and would come back around again. Like embarkation day was always the same thing offered in the buffet because of course everyone on embarkation day is rushing to get on board as quickly as possible so they can have their first meal of the day, yours truly included, aboard on the ship. And so usually embarkation day, they have some really special roast. Usually it's a steamship beef roast. Yeah, so the buffet is included in the cost of your fare. They have a continental breakfast there early in the morning. Then they have a breakfast buffet from 7:30 to 10:30. Note that on our Japan, on all throughout Asia, basically, I was informed, Queen Elizabeth's dining hours were a half hour to an hour earlier for the entire duration. So that meant if you wanted breakfast in the main dining room, which was actually our favorite place to take breakfast because they had the best breakfast options in the Britannia, you had to actually be there by 9 o'clock. Which, in my opinion, on a vacation is too early to have to get up and be dressed and be moving about on a sea day to take breakfast. But that's just me. I prefer the brunch hour of, very civilized brunch hour of 11 for a good breakfast. Then there's lunch in the buffet. They also offer afternoon tea in the buffet. Right, so you can take afternoon tea either in the buffet where you just serve yourself scones, sandwiches, tea cakes, pastries, those sorts of things, cookies. They also have gluten-free options, low sugar options, lactose-free options, all across the whole ship, including the buffets, including tea time. Or you can go to the Queen's room, which is the ballroom in the center of the ship, and have afternoon tea with white-gloved waiters coming swirling about like this beautiful ballet, carrying trays laden with scones and clotted cream, fresh baked scones, by the way, literally fresh from the oven, piping hot. Various sorts of pastries that change from day to day, tea cakes, sandwiches also that rotate a little bit day to day. And of course, always keeping your teacup topped up for all of us afternoon caffeine junkies. So, like I said, the nice thing about the Queen's room is someone is serving you, or many very hardworking people are serving you, and you have live musical entertainment. And sometimes you even have a tea dance where you can get up and dance lovely ballroom dances as you like. So, my favorite, of course, is to take tea in the Queen's room, even if I'm not hungry. And I almost never eat the tea things. A couple of exceptions. If there's a lemon something cake, I will always eat it. So Battenberg cake or lemon tart or something like that. But I do love just drinking tea, enjoying the atmosphere, and getting up and dancing occasionally. Yeah. So if there are any questions about these dining options, let me know. Now, everything thus far, yes, that I've discussed, is included in the cost of your cruise fare. You do not pay a single cent extra for these components. But as has been the trend on many cruise lines over the last 15 years at this point, there are also now premium dining options, or there's a better word for it. Anyway, surcharge dining options aboard Queen Elizabeth, all the queens actually. And on Queen Elizabeth, you basically have three a la carte dining options. One, since we were just talking about afternoon tea, is the champagne tea. And this is an elevated afternoon tea experience. In the other venues, the Queen's room and the Lido buffet, obviously, nothing is served on tea tiers, right? It's just literally put on your plate before you. In the grills, you actually get the proper tiers with everything in its proper order. For those of you who are not in grills, you can still have the tea tier experience by going for the champagne tea. And it's called that because not only do you get tea, but you also get champagne. No, it's not a cocktail. That would be kind of disgusting, actually. Served separately in two separate drinking vessels. But there you get an elevated caliber of pastries and sandwiches. I'm not certain if the scones are any different. I haven't taken the champagne tea myself. I've only seen it, so I don't know if the scones are a special, extra special kind of scone. They were not in the grills. They were exactly the same as that was being served in the Queen's room. So, take that as you will. The champagne tea was, I believe, $60 a person. That I don't know if that included gratuities or not. And it was served in the Veranda restaurant. So, if you would like an elevated tea experience and you actually want the tea tiers and you actually drink champagne, which I do not generally, except in minor little celebratory quantities, you might want to consider the champagne tea. If any of you have tried the champagne tea on any of the queens, please do let me know in the comments what you thought of it, if you thought it was worth the surcharge or not, if you would do it again, if you always do it when you go on board, let me know. I'm very interested about other people's experience. So, I mentioned there the Veranda. The Veranda I think it's called the Steakhouse at the Veranda or something like that now. The Veranda is a restaurant that is on deck 2, kind of actually across the atrium from the Corinthia Lounge, and it is a premium restaurant. It is a premium steakhouse, and you pay a surcharge. You pay a surcharge depending on whether it's lunch or dinner. Lunch, it's $25 per person, I think the surcharge was. For dinner, I believe it's $55 a person. And the reason there's a difference in that price is because the lunch menu is severely restricted compared to the dinner menu. And in fact, I would say that there wasn't much on the lunch menu that actually interested me. We actually were invited by a very lovely lady, a friend we made on this voyage, very interesting person. She invited us to join her for lunch in the Veranda, and we were happy to jump at the chance to both try out the Veranda, but enjoy the company of our new companion. And so it gave me a chance to actually experience the whole thing firsthand. The service was excellent. It was very attentive. It was a different style of service than in the main dining room, less classic, more trendy, should we say. The way the waiters were dressed, the serving dishes. I almost finished a video on that. I'll be getting that out soon. I need to go and remember all the videos I started editing and haven't finished. But the lunch menu was definitely not very interesting to me. The dinner menu, though, had lamb chops and lamb shank and Wagyu beef, although the Wagyu beef was a surcharge on top of the surcharge, which I kind of think is cheeky. There was brisket on the evening menu. Yeah, the dinner menu, definitely much more interesting, but you're paying almost twice the surcharge. And that did not include gratuities, I don't think. So you're kind of expected to pay a gratuity on top of that. So would I willingly pay $25 or even $35 per person again for lunch? No, I don't think I would. I think we're going to be diamond level status on the next voyage, which means we actually get one free lunch in the Veranda each, and we'll take advantage of that and we'll enjoy it. It was good food, but I didn't feel it was that much elevated, the lunch experience at any rate. It was not that much elevated to merit the additional cost, but that's just me. What do you think, for those of you who actually been in the Veranda for lunch? Was it worth the extra money? Did you think it was that much better than the standard dining experiences? Do let me know in the comments. Cheap plug for engagement. Welcome to the YouTube creation world. Right, shoes. Those of you who want to know, these are the shoes I'm often wearing in my travel videos. These are my travel boots. I bought them from a shoemaker in Venice in 2018, and they have held out so very well. I've put literally hundreds of miles on them at this point. So souvenirs that are useful for the win, because every time I wear them, I think of Venice. The good things about Venice, by the way. Okay, so I think those are actually all the dining options, and that brings us up to speed on the dining. For those of you who are watching, if you've just joined, also please remember to hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying this even a little bit. It really helps get my content in front of more people and allows my channel to grow. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat. Or if you're watching this as a recording, pop them in the comments. I always answer questions, but I do delete rude comments, just so you know. Okay, moving on to the entertainment, as was. So the entertainment was not much changed from previous voyages. There is a Royal Court Theatre, for those who don't know, which is a beautiful space, really elegant. And I wish all modern theaters, whether cinema or otherwise, were designed in this lovely fashion. Very classic, very, early first half of the 20th century. So like 1930s, 1940s, very elegant, but also rather ornate. My preference for interior decor. And they've rotated between a variety of shows from night to night. Some of them were sort of Broadway reviews, where they would actually do song and dance numbers from, Broadway standards, from West End standards, Broadway standards. They also had themed performances that used the very, very professional, singers and dancers of the Royal Court Theatre. They also had rotating guests who would come in and perform different sorts of things. There was actually a tap dance troupe that did a fun tap dance routine that our eldest child, who's 17, really enjoyed. He went back twice, actually. He enjoyed it so much. They also had some soloist performers. We met a world-class pianist. Her name is Veronica. She has a school in Taiwan, and she tours the world playing classical piano, composes her own music. I made good friends with her, and she was on board just to perform, and got a free cruise out of it. So that's one fun way to earn a living, I guess. Yeah, really high caliber performers in the Royal Court Theatre. Now, if you're on for 19 days, you will notice that there is repetition because there isn't a whole lot of variety from voyage to voyage. Our voyage was basically 2 voyages that we just booked as one, a 9-day and a 10-day. And so, when we reset in the middle to start the 10-day leg, basically everything else reset. And so we went back to basically the same shows that were on the first leg. So if you're on Cunard for a length of time, you might notice that the food will start getting repetitive, the menu will definitely start getting repetitive, and the Royal Court Theatre entertainment will also start getting repetitive. So yeah, generally everyone I talked to who went to the shows found them enjoyable. Some more than others, but that could be more a question of taste rather than quality of the performance. Obviously, Cunard is trying to cater to a broad variety of tastes, so they're offering different sorts of things. Musical, dance, comedy, dramatic, musical theater, trying to do a little bit of everything. And they generally succeed. And when you consider that these people are performing at the fore of the ship, the front of the ship, where you have the most motion, if there is going to be motion, it's pretty impressive that they can actually, the dancers especially, can actually pull off what they're doing, dancing and singing, and sometimes fighting the ocean. Obviously, on really high sea days, they do cancel shows because no one, and especially not Cunard, wants anyone to, injure themselves while on the job. Yeah, but our voyage was so smooth. We had no rough seas. We had slight motion on a couple of days, but nothing that would preclude doing activities such as dancing. Whereas we have been on voyages, crossing the Bay of Biscay, where we weren't able to do anything because of nausea. So, yeah. If you want a nice calm cruise, then I can highly recommend China Sea, the South Sea, the East Sea, depending on the Sea of Japan, depending on what country you are and what you might call it. Yeah, basically sort of east of China. All the waters west of China seem to be pretty peaceful when you're not cruising during typhoon season, which no one does. So, other forms of entertainment, for those who don't know, there is a Queen's Room, area ballroom that is called the Queen's Room. There on many nights, there is a dance orchestra, get to that name in a minute, where you can do ballroom and Latin dancing. We noticed an interesting change, and I know it's on purpose, and I know why. So they used to be called the Queen's Room Orchestra, a very elegant name hearkening back to the golden age of cruising that Cunard purports to recreate. Well, now they're the Queen's Room Musicians, which I think really just downgrades. I know, I'm a linguist, so I care about language matters. I feel like it downgrades the experience, the caliber of the experience, to just call them musicians instead of an orchestra. I really thought that calling them a dance orchestra really was charming and vintage, and Cunard is going about it all the wrong ways to attract a younger audience, and I guess they thought younger people don't like the word orchestra. Who knows? Anyway, the ways of Cunard's entertainment department are very mysterious and unknowable. It's kind of like a religion. So there was ballroom dancing almost every night on the first leg of our voyage, but the first leg of our voyage actually didn't feature it. We had 1,200 Japanese passengers. Sorry. We had 1,200 Japanese passengers out of the total passenger crew. And I think I was told we had 4 ballroom dance schools on board who came on as dance schools. So the first 9 days of the voyage, ballroom, the Queen's room was jam-packed. It was literally combat dancing. I mean, you could tell that a lot of dancers from certain parts of the world have never danced on a social floor. They've only danced in competition or in their ballroom dance classes. And so they had no idea about not doing their big bad routines in the middle of a packed floor. They had no idea about, yielding space, about politely waiting your turn before moving forward in the rotation of dance. So there was actually literally elbows being thrown. One of the dance hostesses got an elbow to the head to the temple. I watched her smack. I mean, it was like worldwide wrestling. She took a shot to the head like 4 times in one evening. It was pretty rough for a ballroom dance floor, but it was full. And the Queen's room was full of people watching and people dancing. And there were only, I think, 2 party nights. But I will say that the number of party nights per week has been creeping up. So if you are not a party night person, if you are on board for the more formal style dancing, ballroom dancing, you're going to be disappointed going forward, I think, because the trend is towards more and more themed party nights. Then the second half of the voyage, we actually had 200 passengers from Mexico on board. And they were actually ladies who had won, they were top saleswomen for a Mexican line of makeup. And so they had won, as a reward, a all expense paid trip to Japan aboard Queen Elizabeth, tied in with the launch of the flagship store for this makeup line in Tokyo. And these ladies, let me tell you, you could tell that they knew their thing about makeup, and they dressed to the nines every single night. They understood Cunard's elegant approach, its elegant experience. It was lovely seeing them walk about the ship in their gorgeous, gorgeous frocks with all their perfect makeup and their perfect hair. I don't even want to think about how much time they probably spent doing their hair and makeup, honestly. More time than I have patience for. So the second leg of the voyage, we didn't have the ballroom dance schools. And so the entertainment people thought it would be a good idea to eliminate some of the ballroom dancing and just put out a whole slew of themed nights, rock and roll night, and they had a night called Latin Caliente, which was a travesty, if you ask me. They didn't play actual Latin music. They played songs that were tortured into Latin shapes. I mean, I would walk 100 miles as a tango is the least Latin song I can think of. Anyway, yeah, so there were many more themed party nights. By themes, I mean musically themed, not costumes or fancy dresses, you say in the United Kingdom. So, yeah, and that seems to be the direction that Cunard is going. So if you are on board for ballroom dancing, or you look to cruise with Cunard for ballroom dancing, you might want to write headquarters and tell them that you really want them to keep the ballroom dancing, because they're looking to eliminate it. I will tell you that right now, of the 4 queens, only 2 of them have dance professionals on them. On the other 2 queens, the dance classes are being taught by dance hosts, to more or less, mostly less success based on what fellow passengers have told me. And that's the trend. So if you don't like that trend, I recommend you reach out often and express your opinion. Personally, for me, if Cunard gets rid of the ballroom dancing, we will stop cruising. Because that's one of the reasons we cruise, and why we only cruise with Cunard, is so that we can dress to the nines and go dancing every single night and wake up in a new place. But I can wake up in a new place on my own. I don't need a cruise ship to do that. I do need a cruise ship for the dancing every night to a live orchestra. When it ceases to be the case, onward we go. Okay, so the other forms of entertainment, they've got live music all over the ship, but they have gotten rid of the party band. For those of you who remember the party band that they used to have for sailaways, it was a trio, I think, or a choir,
Like 4 or 5.
It was 4 or 5 people. There was a singer, drummer, guitarist, saxophonist, right? And they would play during the sailaways, and they would play on party night. And they were nearly always pretty good, actually. pretty good vibe.
They always had a large group.
They always had a lot of people following them. But Cunard has gotten rid of the party band entirely, and they instead now have 3 different kinds of duos. On our voyage, one of those duos was Catalan. They were a Catalan couple from Catalonia, and they played traditional sea shanties and Irish music, but they also played a whole bunch of folk music from various parts of the Iberian Peninsula in the languages of the Iberian Peninsula, not just Castilian Spanish, and they were fantastic. They were awesome. They had a great feel for the music. They had a great rhythm. The duo La Zeta, or La Zeta, as the Castilians would say. They were great, and we really enjoyed watching them, especially when they saw us coming. They would break out the traditional Iberian music because they knew we loved it so much. They were great. The other 2 duos, the Watson duo and the Something Creek duo, not so much my thing, and it's not necessarily that the vocalists were of low caliber or anything like that, but the problem is that they have these 2 musicians playing to a canned track of music, which is so low class. It literally sounds like karaoke, and it's just heartbreaking. And it's just, in my opinion, it's definitely it's not of the caliber of a ship like Queen Elizabeth. Not up to it at all. And it's a cost-saving measure. It's actually one of the reasons that they now have a string trio instead of a string quartet. You may have noticed. It used to be a quartet, now it's a trio. So yeah, they've moved to this new format. They want it so they can put these duos in different venues throughout the ship. But the canned music, the canned backtrack music is just terrible, in my opinion. What do you think? Have you heard any of these duos? Do you object, as I do, to the canned accompaniment? It's just not my thing. Of course, there are still insight lectures. So these are, lecturers on a variety of topics are brought on board. Nearly always they are comped their cruise, so their cruise is free. They just have to give a lecture series on the sea days of their voyage on a wide array of topics. And we had, of course, a series of lectures. I never managed to get to any of the lectures this time, but this time we actually had the British butler. He's a YouTube... The royal butler. He's a YouTuber, and he is actually a butler in the royal household. Was. Oh, he's no longer is.
Now he runs the Royal Butler Academy.
Oh, right. Okay. He was a butler in the royal household. Yeah, my husband actually attended. Now he runs the Royal Butler Academy. So he actually gave a series of interesting talks about the experience of being a royal butler, about the royal family and the experience of serving them. Also, a very funny presentation on taking tea the proper way. So that was actually a really, really interesting lecture series. And the lectures are going to change on every voyage. You can sometimes find out a little bit in advance, and by a little bit, I mean weeks before you go on board. For the more prestigious lectures that they might schedule, 6 months or a year in advance, sometimes if it's part of a themed cruise, you can find out further in advance, but usually you won't know before you book your voyage as to who the lecturers will be exactly. But there's always a range of topics. Nearly always you can find at least one person whose lecture series might be of interest to you. And if you can't attend during the schedule, they record them and you can watch them on the TV in your stateroom. So that's nice, which is often what we ended up doing because there was so many activities and so much overlap. Sorry for that microphone little hiccup there. So much overlap. Right, in the schedule. So the daily program is just chock full, and they've even color coded it now with type of activity. But unfortunately, it's just so busy with so many colors, I'm not certain the color coding actually helps. It's too many different categories that they have, I think. You might want to, Cunard, if you're listening, you might want to reduce the number of categories for your daily activities to allow the color coding to actually make sense to the eyes instead of just looking like a cubist painting. Okay. If you have any other specific questions about the entertainment or the lectures, do let me know. There's also game rooms for those who don't know. There is a game room, a card room. Cards were not provided, interestingly, in the card room. Games were. Board games were.
They've been there before.
Yeah, no, on the last voyage, someone said there weren't cards either. So I highly recommend that if you like playing cards, bring your own cards. There are card tables, but there won't always be playing cards. But you can also play cards anywhere on the ship. We would often play cards in the Queen's room during the evening dancing. In between dances, we would play rounds. It's a nice thing to do on a sea day. Find a beautiful corner of the ship and just, relax with your friends or your family and, play some, card fun like spades or hearts or whatever it is that you like. Castle, as we started infecting people on board. Let's see, anything else about entertainment? I think those are the big points about entertainment. I will say that overall, I feel like the quality of the music has deteriorated because they now have an increasing number of musicians playing against recorded backtracks, which is definitely not the way to go. And unfortunately, there is rarely an instance where cruise lines go back to the way they did things before, because the way they did things before was usually more expensive. So I suspect this is the path forward. And in fact, they had a player piano in the main lobby playing whenever there wasn't a live musician there. They didn't used to have a player piano. There used to just be a pianist playing there. And now they've got a player piano, and I kind of feel like that's where it's going to be going increasingly in the future, is instruments that play themselves, sadly, for instruments that can. Excursions. So we were on board for 19 nights, and there were many, many excursions, all of which we felt were not worth the price, but that's because we're energetic and agile and physically able, and we're very adventuresome, and we don't let language barriers stop us ever. So obviously for us, no matter what country we go to, getting around is not a problem. But I could understand that for people who might have different levels of ability than we do, or are not quite so comfortable just sort of striking out on their own, the excursion might be the way to go. We talked to several people, lots of people who did excursions.
Father.
Yeah, including my father-in-law, and who did both the self-excursion and the excursion. And many people said that they preferred their self-excursions to the paid excursions on this particular voyage. But that can vary from geographic region to geographic region, from voyage to voyage, because it won't always be the same excursions. It won't be the same people leading the excursions. So, it's going to vary. Your mileage will definitely vary when it comes to excursions. You just have to decide for yourself whether it's worth the extra, often $100 to $200 extra a day to go on an excursion, or to just, get out there yourself. I will say that most of the ports, you were able to just walk off the ship and see something neat and experience local culture and learn something of the local history. Now, that might not get you to the big main sites. The main advertised sites might be a train ride away, or a bus ride away, or an excursion away. But I can't think of I can't think of any of the ports. Oh, no. Ishigaki, you had to take a shuttle into the town. And then the town itself wasn't that interesting, but that took you to a ferry. The shuttle took you right to the ferry port, and you could take a high-speed ferry to the most amazing island I've ever seen, Takatomi. Yes, that was Ishigaki.
Okay.
Yes, to Takatomi Island, which is a car-free island that still lives in this old-fashioned, slow manner. Living in homes of, the same style in which people have been living for several hundred years, doing farming, small-scale farming and traditional arts and crafts. And it was really just so quiet and peaceful, and I would absolutely go back for a long weekend, maybe even a week. And that says something for a high-energy person like myself. Yeah. So excursions versus self-excursion, I would say that comes down to your level of adventuresomeness, your level of physical ability, and how comfortable you are with kind of rolling the dice. I personally love to roll the travel dice because they nearly always come up sixes for me. I just have really great travel luck. I always meet neat people. I always find neat things. I always have grand adventures that get me back to the ship safely somehow. But that's just me. Your mileage will definitely vary on that score. Okay, so otherwise, let's see, in general, the service was still excellent. We saw no degradation or change in the level of service from on board the ship. Everyone was very friendly and very attentive, and I held conversations with many of the staff members who come from a wide variety of places and have such interesting lives. So, I do recommend, actually, when they have time, obviously not if they're really busy, chatting up the staff and getting to know them a little bit. It also helps because they might, bring you nice little things like an extra slice of lime or something like that. It'll just make your voyage, I think, more enjoyable if you connect with the people who are working so hard to make this wonderful experience for you. And, in the main dining room, even though we only dined there like 5 times, our waiter remembered our specific tastes and requests and always had them ready to go, when it came to post-dinner beverage, tea or coffee, and what kind of special dessert. Like I asked if I could just have strawberries and cream. He remembered that and had them ready for me every night. So yeah, service level still absolutely where they should be. And the tip I always have when cruising on any cruise line, but especially Cunard, if there's something you would like and you don't see it on a menu, just ask for it anyway. The worst they'll say is, "I'm sorry, madam or sir, we cannot accommodate you." That's the worst that will happen. It never hurts to ask. Always ask. Don't be shy about asking. And try to always be a little understanding and a little kind towards the staff on board, the crew on board, because their life is not easy. They're working 12-hour shifts usually. They are literally on their feet all day. They are, working in a variety of sea conditions and, fighting off infections, which invariably are going to sweep across any ship, no matter how hard they try to fight the sanitary conditions.
I did a really good job this time.
And although we actually had an outbreak of norovirus, actually, on our voyage, and the captain took immediate action. And literally, we went to hyper hygiene measures. They made the buffet no longer self-serve. So, and the crew and the staff really jumped to and did exactly the right thing, even though it meant there were a lot more people working a lot longer hours than had originally been intended, because that meant they needed like 4 times the number of people in the buffet area to actually serve you your food. Interestingly, though, when they had the staff serving us, instead of us serving ourselves, the buffet stayed way cleaner. I don't think that's a coincidence. But yeah, the captain managed to get that norovirus outbreak under control, and by the second leg of the voyage, we were able to go back to business as usual. So, kudos to the entire Queen Elizabeth team for managing to stem off what could have been a very unpleasant news story. For those of you who don't know what norovirus is, look it up. And hopefully you'll start washing your hands and using the hand sanitizer a lot more often when on board. Oh, okay. Question about the excursions. Are the excursions scheduled for the mornings or afternoons? How long are they on average? Thank you, Jeff. That is an excellent question. It depends on the port and the port times. Now, most of the excursions leave in the morning. Usually, you're asked to meet at like 8 or 8:30 in the Queen's room, and then they give you a little sticker, and you're put into a group, and then you're shuttled off the ship together as a group and ferried to your bus or whatever method of transport. Mostly, it's mornings. It's at least a half day. Nearly every port will have a half day and a full day option. The half day might be a taste of Tokyo, something like that. And then the full day might be, if you're in Tokyo, for instance, might be the glories of Kyoto, because Kyoto's, of course, further afield. So you will have options between half day and full day. And in the case of some ports, when you actually have an overnight, sometimes they will offer overnight excursions in somewhat rather distant places. So when we were on our voyage from Hong Kong to Dubai, they actually had, when we ported into Cambodia, they actually had an overnight excursion to Angkor Wat, where you actually met up with the ship in the next port. So they actually took people up to Angkor Wat, overnighted there, and then bused them down to our next port, which I think was Kuala Lumpur.
None.
I think it was. Or was it Saigon? I think, no, that would have been, no, because Cambodia is on the other side of Vietnam. No, it had to have been Kuala Lumpur. Well, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Went to our next port. So started in Cambodia in Siem Reap. They took the bus up to Angkor Wat, overnighted there, and then met up with the ship the next day in the next port. So there are actually, in fact, some overnight excursions depending on your voyage. And the longer your ship is in port, the more extensive excursion options they will offer. That being said, I want to reemphasize for everyone who's watching this now and in the future, your port itinerary is not guaranteed. The only thing you are guaranteed when you book a voyage is the number of nights you will be on the ship. I don't even know if they have to guarantee embarkation and disembarkation ports, honestly. So you just have to remember that. Book a cruise because you like the cruise line, you like the product they offer on board, because you might end up spending your entire voyage at sea. You never know. That also means excursion-wise, if you book private excursions on your own power and your itinerary changes, you're left holding the bag for cancellation fees. That's unfortunately on you. That is the advantage of on a ship excursion, is that if anything changes about the itinerary, about the port times, thereby necessitating a change to your excursion, you get your money back, no questions asked. So you might maybe consider that elevated cost of the ship organized excursion sort of protection money, which makes it sound a little like a mafia protection racket, but that's not what I mean, but maybe it is a little bit.
And remember that the change may not be under their power at all.
Well, yeah. So almost never will a cruise line change the itinerary because they want to, because that throws a wrench into so many things about their very careful logistics planning, their resupply planning, their refueling planning, their waste evacuation planning. There's so many aspects of running a ship of which most passengers are unaware. So changing the itinerary can really mess with that. Nearly always, it's either because of weather, inclement weather. Many times, we have been on a voyage where the weather was just so rough that you couldn't even get to the first port on your itinerary, crossing the Bay of Biscay. And also, sometimes geopolitical circumstances will cause your itinerary to change rather drastically, as in recent times. So I know people get so angry at the cruise line for port changes, but it's almost never the cruise line that instigates a port change. It's almost always, force majeure, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, not the cruise line. Yeah.
Last time was an earthquake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On our voyage, we had such a port change because our voyage included Taiwan, and we were supposed to go to Hualien. Well, if any of you were watching the news 2 months ago, Hualien was struck by a catastrophic 7.4 earthquake. And the damage was horrific. The lives lost, absolutely tragic. And so we did not go to Hualien. We ended up overnighting in Keelung, which we actually really liked. I really like overnight ports. I prefer overnight ports because it actually allows you to really get into the place and experience it, not just during those brief daytime hours, but see the nightlife. And in Asia and the Mediterranean, actually, nighttime is the right time. That's when everyone comes out to play. South America too, now that I think about it. So yeah, I really like overnight ports. So we actually appreciated not the reason, it was horrible the reason, and Hualien would have been a beautiful place to overnight as well, but we got to overnight in Keelung, which allowed us to meet the owner of a local cafe, a local coffee bar, and she took us out the next day to her favorite place in the city, this beautiful park that used to be a fish farm and is now a natural saltwater set of swimming pools, and yeah, we just, really allowed us to make new friends, new travel friends. And we saw pufferfish in the wild. They were so cute. Don't ever touch a pufferfish in case you're wondering. Don't be tempted. So the excursions, various lengths. You just have to decide if the money's worth it to you. There will be a guide unless it says otherwise. Sometimes, occasionally, Cunard offers something that'll be entitled something along the lines of Granada on your own, where all they're providing is the transportation. Sometimes that can actually be a good deal. The cost of transportation to that place, depending on what the public transit situation is or how much taxis cost. The advantage of the on your own option for the excursion is that if anything happens to prevent your on your own transport from getting back to the ship by all aboard time, they will hold the ship. Or if they can't, for whatever reason, the cruise line will pay for you to meet up with them en route or at the next port, right? Whereas if you are on your own, they will not hold the ship. To a point. They definitely, and we heard many calls for, would Mr. and Mrs. Smith of Deck 8 kindly but urgently contact the purser's desk after all aboard time, because they're always checking. They try. Really, Cunard tries really hard not to leave anyone behind. They don't want to. They don't want to be the bad guys. And so we have been on board where they have definitely delayed, half an hour, 45 minutes in some cases, to wait until the last passengers were on board. So, but don't be that person. Don't test that, because I've also heard stories of people who missed the boat where they literally packed up their things with their passports and left them at their local port agent's office. And those people just had to make their way back to the boat on their own, the ship on their own, in the next port. So I don't think that was Cunard. But don't test it. Don't test it. And you are very welcome. Thank you for the excellent questions, Jeff. I really appreciate the engagement. Excursions, self-excursions. Excursions come with the protection of the ship not leaving you behind. Self-excursions are far less expensive and might actually offer more interesting experiences, because organized excursions will be very formulaic, and it will generally be go to this place, go to this place, go to this place for 20 minutes, go to that place for 20 minutes, go to this place for 20 minutes, take your pictures, get back on the ship.
And we did do an excursion this last one.
Yes, we did. Right. So in sort of combination with disembarkation and excursions, Cunard offers disembarkation excursions pretty much every voyage, specifically for people who have late flights in the day or maybe aren't even flying that day at all to return home. So check at the purser's office to ask if they have this, because these disembarkation excursions have the benefit of also taking you to the airport. So you basically stop and see some things on your way out of the city. So they call these farewell to whatever the city is, in this case, farewell to Tokyo, the farewell to Tokyo tour. And we actually did the excursion because it wasn't that, for us, it really wasn't that much more expensive than paying for an Uber to the airport from the Tokyo cruise terminal, because the Tokyo cruise terminal is not easily accessible from the airport by public transit. And not if you have lots of bags. If you don't have bags, it's fine. The second you have as many suitcases as we have, it would have been annoying. Possible, but annoying. So the cost of the Uber was $190 one way for a VIP, very cushy, very nice Uber van, luxury van, basically, plenty of room for all of our suitcases and 3 of us. Whereas the Farewell to Tokyo tour was like $105 a person. So we decided to take advantage of actually getting to see things on our way out of town while also getting to the airport in a comfortable manner. And we would pay $40. It was worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it.
It was worth it, I would say, especially with the amount of luggage we had. It was worth it. It was worth that money because we actually got to see quite a few very interesting things on the way out of town, in and around Tokyo, and things we hadn't seen yet and maybe wouldn't have seen. And there was a tour guide, and the tour guide provided very interesting information and was very happy to answer questions, spoke very good English, and was very friendly. And we got to the airport in a very timely fashion and very convenient and easy. So you do have to bring your own bags to the bus, which was a major pain in the butt in Tokyo. I don't know who designed Tokyo's new international cruise terminal, but they didn't design it for people actually cruising. I don't know for whom they designed it. It's multi-stories, and the luggage pickup area is on the second floor. And there are elevators to take you to the ground floor.
Because you ain't taking this.
Escalators with his, it was a nightmarish disembarkation situation, which is probably why going forward next season, Elizabeth is going to be cruising out of Yokohama instead of Tokyo's cruise terminal. I think they've decided it's way too much of a pain in the tuchus, and it is. Okay, very specific to those of you who are cruising out of Tokyo. So that means next year you'll be cruising out of Yokohama, which is not Tokyo. It's a different city. And if you are flying in for your voyage, do not fly into Narita, because Narita is nowhere near Yokohama. Your voyage from Narita to Yokohama will be about 2 hours in good traffic. So I recommend flying into Yokohama if you can manage that. At worst, Haneda, which is closer to Yokohama, but still. So tip going forward. Okay, I think those were all the main things that we noted. They had to shut down the aft pool. The aft pool they shut down to do all those repairs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the aft pool. So the biggest pool is the aft pool. And they actually shut that down on the second half of our voyage. And they drained it, and they were doing some serious repairs to it. So I'm not certain what happened there. I'm assuming that water must have been leaking, which would be unfortunate if you're in the cabins on that part of the ship. So there was that. That happened. I forgot one premium dining venue. There's one other premium dining venue, premium meaning surcharge, and that is the themed restaurant that changes from evening to evening up in the other half of the Lido deck. So in the evening, half of the Lido deck shuts down and becomes a themed, I forget what they call it. They have a specific term for it. But it's a restaurant for which you have to pay a surcharge. Bamboo or Coriander, or I think the American Smokehouse has occasionally been one of the options. And you pay $25 per person for dinner to dine there. And it is a seated experience. You order from a menu, and the quality of food is elevated. I saw some people who ate there almost every night, actually. It must be good enough to be worth it. I personally we did not decide to take advantage and see what it was like this time. Maybe we will next time for the sake of honesty and reporting. If you've cruised, if you've taken advantage of one of the premium themed restaurants aboard Queen Elizabeth, Victoria, or Mary, let me know in the comments what you thought of it and whether you would actually pay that surcharge to do so again. I'm always interested to hear everyone else's experiences. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of my report. Some comments, and anyone who has any last questions, go ahead and get those out. I'll give you a moment to do that since there's a delay. I will say that it seemed to us that there were several parts of the ship that definitely need repair. There were a lot of cabins where things were breaking on a massive scale, like water pipes breaking and leaking massive amounts of water everywhere, and people having to shuffle cabins, which was a little tricky on a fully booked voyage. There were a lot of areas where veneer was cracking off, and so there's some, she's now 14 years old. So, probably just a little bit of maintenance, but she's still a beautiful ship, and I think she's still my favorite of the four queens. I've only seen pictures of Queen Anne that leave me utterly disenchanted, and I will not be paying to cruise on her. If I have a comped voyage, I might do it, but she's really not my style or taste at all. So yeah, of the four queens, Elizabeth is my favorite. Then Victoria, and then Queen Mary. Queen Mary's beautiful, but the ballroom, the Queen's room, is 4, which means for dancing, it is horrible if there's any kind of motion on the ocean because you feel it the most up there. Yeah. So one other thing I was going to comment on, upgrades. In past times, people were granted upgrades based on two factors: status, so frequent cruiser status, World Club status, so to say, and the fare that you paid when you booked. It nearly was always that fare that you paid when you booked was the primary factor in deciding an upgrade, followed by your frequent cruiser status. By which I mean, let's say you booked an inside cabin and you paid $4,000 per person for it, for a 2-week voyage, whatever, it doesn't matter. As they start getting closer to the voyage and they need to fill up the ship, it's easier to fill up the ship from the lower grade cabins, the less expensive cabins. So they'll look at what fares everyone has paid, and people who've paid higher fares will get upgraded first to make room from the bottom of the ship. You know, kind of up and up and up and up. So if someone paid, two people paid for a Princess Grill, one paid $6,000, one paid $4,000, the people who paid $6,000 are going to get priority on that upgrade to the Queen's Grill. Okay. And then all other things being equal, like fare paid, then they move on to loyalty status. And then if you paid more and your loyalty, or you paid the same but your loyalty status is higher, then you get upgraded. Well, this last voyage, Cunard had started offering bid upgrades, the same way a lot of airlines are actually now offering bids for upgrades to higher cabins on the plane. So we actually received an email offering us to bid to upgrade. We were in an outside cabin and we were offered bidding options on everything up to and including Queen's Grill. And they provide you with a minimum bid that will be accepted, and then you can put in whatever your maximum is. And I recommend that you really think about it, if an upgrade is worth it to you, and then put in really, truly, truly what is the maximum you would really be willing to pay. Because they're not going to do a bidding thing where they'll come back to you and say, well, would you offer us this instead? No, you get one chance to bid. So if upgrade is important enough to you, then think about what that maximum value is and really enter that value. Don't try it. There's no games here. I will say that my father-in-law was offered an upgrade and he actually bid $800 for both members of his cabin, my son and himself, although I don't know if he realized that he was going to have to pay $800 for my son to upgrade with him. But either way, he bid $800 for the upgrade to a balcony, and his bid did not get accepted. So, yeah. So that should tell you that, you know, the competition for these upgrades can be fierce, depending on your voyage, depending on how booked it is, so many different factors. On the other hand, I've heard of some people getting upgraded on a 4-day voyage to Queen's Grill from a balcony, standard balcony, for 400 pounds per person. So you can really win good value, you know, with these upgrade bids. But that means that pretty much the days of being upgraded because of your loyalty status, that's probably done. That's probably dead and done. The only exception would be the only way it would still happen is if Cunard is expecting such high minimum bids that no one bids. And then they have to resort back to fare and status. But it looks like the days of being upgraded based on status are over. But you can upgrade with your cold hard cash. Okay, let's see. Any other items? Checking for any questions. Oh, dress code. Dress code. Oh, I saved this for last because, you know, recently many of the Cunard fora have just been set on fire by the dress code. Okay, here is the status as of April/May 2024 aboard Queen Elizabeth. There were basically 2 dress codes. There was smart attire and there was gala. And they provided in the daily program, they not only stated the specific name of the dress code, but they provided concrete examples of what was acceptable and what was not acceptable, and in which areas of the ship. I will tell you, for those of you who are frequent Cunarders and have been on many times over the years, the number of venues where completely casual clothing is accepted is increasing. So now the casino, you can basically dress in, jeans and a shirt, and that will be fine. So there's a larger number of casual venues, even on gala evenings. And I will say that having people in the casino in casual clothes, especially on a gala evening, it ruined it. It didn't ruin it. It made that end of the ship not very desirable to be in. And why should that, the question always asked, what is it to you how other people dress? Well, for people like me, aesthetics are very important. It just is. Psychologically, my surroundings matter to me. How beautiful they are matters. The people, not their physical beauty, but how they're dressed is part of that atmosphere and part of the surroundings. I can't ignore 2,000 other people. It's a little hard. It would be one thing if it was me and one other person. The other person would kind of vanish into the background. But me and 400 other people in any given space, you can't really, in any given section of the ship, you can't really ignore that. I can't anyway. So for me, having everyone dress smart or elegantly, it just enhances the experience because that's the kind of person I am. Also, acoustic aesthetics matter to me. So having beautiful music in places and not canned music matters to me also because that's part of my aesthetic enjoyment of my voyage. And I expect that for people who care about the dress code, it's pretty much the same. They care, the visual of the entire surroundings, including the living surroundings, matters. And that's why many of us do care about how other people dress. It's not because we're snobby. I'm definitely not snobby. I come from a very solidly middle-class background. I work very hard for what I have. Not snobby, and I accept that everyone comes from different places. But on a voyage for which I've paid thousands of dollars to cruise, then I expect a certain ambiance and a certain aesthetic, and the dress code plays a big part of that. And that's why I don't cruise with anyone else other than Cunard, because everyone else, literally every other cruise line, has a super casual dress code. If you want casual, pick any of the other cruise lines that have equal service and equal facilities, maybe even better facilities because they're not classical in they have more, resort style cruise ships. Anyway, that all being said, the dress code is not really being forced in any way as far as I can see in any of the public spaces where there is supposed to be a certain dress code. Take that for what it is. There were many people in the Queen's room we saw in jeans and t-shirts or shorts and tank tops on a gala night. They were there. They were, funny enough, they were happy to go and watch everyone else be dressed up, but they didn't think it mattered if they dressed up. There were people dressed like that in the main dining room on gala evenings and on smart evenings when you're not supposed to be wearing like sportswear. It even says it specifically in the dress code. So I will say that there has been a definite relaxation in the dress code. When we had 1,200 Japanese passengers on board the first half of my voyage, let me tell you, those Japanese passengers worked really hard to dress very elegantly. They came dressed nicely for afternoon tea. They dressed up in the evening. On gala evenings, they dressed up even more. It was a really lovely ambiance. The second half of the voyage, we had many more Westerners, and the level of formality of dress dropped noticeably and precipitously. So no, the staff are not enforcing the dress code, and I think it's because they've probably been instructed not to do so, is my suspicion. So, dress codes are what the passengers make of them. If the passengers want an elegant experience and to be part of an elegant experience, then they will. If they don't, then they won't, and no one can make them. So if the elegance of attire is part of the joy of cruising with Cunard for you, again, you might want to reach out to Cunard and let them know. They would especially be interested in hearing from people 50 and younger. I guarantee you that's the demographic for which they're now aiming. They're hoping to build the next generation of Cunarders. Okay, well, that was the dress code. It is definitely getting less formal in general, unless you happen to be on a ship with many, many Japanese passengers. Then it gets formal again, and really beautifully formal. Some of the kimonos that the ladies were wearing, oh, so gorgeous. Including formal, what's the name for the flip-flops that aren't flip-flops? The Japanese ones.
I don't know.
Oh, damn it.
Sorry.
the not flip-flops. I hate to use the word flip-flop. That sounds so disrespectful. The beautiful thonged shoes that you wear with a kimono. Anyway, there were some very nice formal varieties of those. Okay, I think that is all I have. That is the news from Lake Wobegon for those of you who are just in Keeler. Oh, okay, so news from my household. We have adopted a rescue kitten. Poor little baby was abandoned by its mommy and was not thriving, and so we couldn't bear to see him suffering, and so he's now thriving, and he is imprinted on Ryan really, really hard. Really hard. Okay, well, everyone, from my home to your home, may your travels be creative and unplanned. If you have any questions, do leave them in the comments below. Please do remember to hit that thumbs up or the thumbs down. Just engage. YouTube really doesn't care. If you hit the thumbs down, it supports my channel too. Welcome to YouTube. It's a very negative world. Okay, everyone. Happy traveling. Until later. Bye.
Meow, 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 meow. Do you see this?